Hey everyone, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how global our community is. Now, let's get started. I used to love the sound of rain on my bedroom window. It made the world feel far away and harmless, like everything bad could knock and never get in. But the night something started tapping at my window when the sky was clear and the air was frozen. That glass stopped feeling like protection and started feeling thin. I was house sitting for my parents while they were out of town, alone in the 2-story suburban box I grew up in. My old room faced the narrow side yard and the neighbor's wooden fence. No trees close enough to scrape the glass, no ledge anyone could stand on. The window latch had been loose for years, but my dad always said it was good enough. Beside my bed, the red digital clock blinked 2:17 a.m., still on the wrong time because I never set it. Out in the side yard, a motion sensor light waited, ready to flip on for any cat or raccoon that came too close. The first tap sounded like a fingernail on the glass. Sharp, light, polite. Not the slow creak of pipes or the heavy shifting of an old house. I froze with my phone in my hand and listened. A second tap came higher up, and the loose latch rattled once like a tiny breath. The motion light outside stayed dark. No wind, no rustling, just that small, deliberate sound. I told myself it was nothing, hit play on a random video, pulled the blanket over my head, and forced myself to sleep. In the morning, I almost laughed at myself for being jumpy, right up until I saw the marks. 3 pale arcs in the condensation near the bottom of the pane, spaced exactly like fingertips would be if someone had leaned in to peek. I wiped them away harder than I needed to and decided not to mention any of it to my parents. I had a reputation for being paranoid about sounds in this house. I was not in the mood to prove everyone right. The second night, I tried to be less of a coward. I checked the loose latch twice and shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. Around 1:40 a.m., my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I declined it without thinking, then put the phone on silent and told myself that if nothing happened by 3 a.m., I would finally relax. The blinking red digits rolled back to 2:17 and just stayed there, like the clock had given up trying to be accurate and picked that time to die on. The tap came again at exactly 2:17. It was softer this time, like whoever was doing it knew I was awake. One tap, then another slightly higher, as if something was slowly standing up outside the window. The chair under the latch gave a small, complaining creak, like it had been nudged. I tried to picture a loose screen shifting, or maybe the neighbor's kid playing some late-night prank with a stick, but there was no branch that could reach this high and no ladder thumping against the wall. Still, I held on to the explanation, because the alternative crept up the back of my neck like cold fingers. The air near the window grew colder than the rest of the room, sharp and thin. A soft bloom of fog appeared on the inside of the glass, even though I was across the room. Slowly, a circle cleared at about my eye level, as if someone on the other side had leaned in and breathed against it. I could not see through that little clear patch, but I could not stop imagining a face waiting just beyond it, inches from mine. My phone, which I had flipped to silent, lit up with a dull glow. Same unknown number, buzzing again and again, the vibration thudding through the mattress. For a while I just lay there, counting the buzzes and the taps and my own heartbeat. "Call the police," one part of me said. "You are going to sound insane," the other part whispered back. No motion light outside meant no one was there. No tree meant it had to be the house. No one else heard this but me. Every excuse contradicted the others, but I stacked them up anyway, like a wall between me and the thing my gut already believed. Eventually, the fear of not knowing beat the fear of knowing. I slid out of bed, my legs unsteady, and crossed the room. The unknown number was still flashing on my phone, vibrating in little bursts that seemed to answer each tap. The second my fingers touched the curtain, the buzzing stopped. The tapping paused, as if whoever was outside had turned to watch me more closely. My whole brilliant plan came down to one stupid thought. If I looked and saw nothing, I could finally sleep. That I yanked the curtain open. For a heartbeat, all I saw was my own face, washed pale in the dim light from the hallway behind me. Then my reflection blinked, slow and deliberate, while my real eyes stayed wide open. The fog on the glass had cleared in a perfect circle where my mouth should have been, but it did not move. In the reflection over my shoulder, the digital clock glowed 2:17 in harsh red, solid and steady. Even though I could see out of the corner of my eye that the real clock on the nightstand was completely dark, the tapping started again, right at the level of my reflected throat. Each little knock made the loose latch jerk a fraction of an inch higher. The glass bowed inward just the tiniest bit with each impact, as if the window were starting to breathe with the rhythm of whatever was on the other side. It felt less like I was looking at my reflection and more like something behind the glass was wearing my face and practicing how to use it, whatever courage I had snapped. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the bed, grabbed my phone from the nightstand without looking at the screen, and bolted into the hallway. The light clicked on over my head in a weak yellow flare, and for a second I had the horrible feeling that I was the one who had just stepped inside somewhere I did not belong. I slept on the couch downstairs with every light on, phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. The next morning, in the safe cruelty of daylight, I checked the window again. No cracks, no fog, no finger marks. The latch still wobbled when I touched it, but the glass was steady and blank. The clock on the nightstand had reset itself to 12 o'clock. I told myself it had all been a bad dream and let my dad talk about finally fixing that latch one of these days. I do not sleep in that room anymore, but whenever I stay over and wake for no reason in the small hours, I always check my phone. On the nights when the screen shows a missed call at 2:17 a.m. from an unknown number, I turn the brightness down and pretend I did not see it. Because deep down, I am scared that if I ever answer, I will hear my own voice tapping faintly on the other end, asking from outside the glass why I keep pretending I cannot hear it. I used to like driving at night. Empty highways felt like they belonged to me, just my headlights, the white lines, and the hum of the engine. All the bad things felt far away, locked in other people's houses and other people's towns. That changed on a detour road when I realized the dark was not empty. It was holding something and putting it exactly where I had to look. I was coming home from a late shift, too tired and too cheap to get a motel. The main highway was closed, so a crooked wooden detour sign pushed traffic onto an older two-lane road that cut through the trees. I had about a quarter tank of gas, no towns marked on the GPS for 30 miles, and a dead zone of signal the guy at the last station had already warned me about. He smiled when he took my money. "Just keep going," he said. "If you see anyone standing out there, do not stop." He said it like a joke, but his eyes did not laugh. That MY car had a hairline crack in the passenger side window that whistled at higher speed. A thin, almost human breath right by my ear. The dash clock glowed 2:17. Same wrong time it always showed because I never bothered to fix it. The road was mine alone, no headlights behind me, nothing ahead, when my low beams picked up the first figure. They stood on the shoulder at the edge of the tree line, facing into the woods instead of the pavement. Pale jacket catching just a little light, arms hanging perfectly straight, head tipped as if listening. No wave, no stumble, no thumb out, just that motionless shape. I felt my foot ease off the gas on its own. Then I forced myself to press down again and roll past. I told myself I would call someone when I had a signal, and I tried not to imagine them turning around as my taillights faded. The road curved left, then right, then stretched out straight again. Same trees, same narrow shoulder. The gas needle sank a little lower. My phone showed 0 bars. I turned the radio on for company, but the music dissolved into soft static. Under the hiss, I thought I heard a voice shaping around the noise, a half sentence that sounded like, "Do not leave me again." Or maybe I just needed it to say that. Before I could decide, the headlights washed over the shoulder ahead. There, in almost the same position at the edge of the trees, stood another figure in a pale jacket, arms hanging, head tilted toward the woods. Same height, same angle. My brain wrote it off as coincidence, but something in my stomach knew better. That was when the choice started to crush me. If it was really the same person somehow, then either they were in serious trouble or I was losing my mind out here. If I kept going and found out later that someone had died on this stretch, I would have to live with that. If I stopped, and it was some kind of setup, there was no one within shouting distance. The low fuel chime pinged, bright and cheerful, like a timer starting. I told myself I would pull over one time only. Engine running, doors locked, 1 minute to see if they were moving. Then I would go. The third time I saw it, the decision was already made. My hazard lights clicked on in a nervous stutter, splashing orange across the asphalt and the trunks of the trees. In that broken glow, I saw the figure on the shoulder again, in almost the same spot relative to the curve. I eased onto the gravel a few car lengths ahead and kept the engine rumbling. The cracked window beside me whistled higher, the sound sharpening until it really did feel like a breath. From here, I could see the hood more clearly. The face inside it was not blurred or bloody. It was just empty, a deeper patch of darkness that swallowed my headlights instead of reflecting them. The radio hiss swelled, soft but total, like steam filling the car. Through it, a voice that sounded too much like my own said, very clearly, "You drove past me." I glanced at my phone on the passenger seat. Screen black. No incoming call, no app running. That was when the hazard lights died on their own, leaving only the straight white of my headlights and the darker patch where the thing stood. Gravel should have crunched under its feet, but when it began to turn away from the trees, it did not step. It slid, closing the distance between us without moving its legs at all. My hand drifted to the lock switch before I realized what I was doing. The cracked glass fell silent, as if a hand had pressed flat against it from the outside. Up close, the hood was level with my own face. 2 tiny points of reflection appeared where I should have been, not out on the shoulder, but floating in the dark, exactly where my passenger window caught my own headlights. The empty patch where a mouth should be stretched slowly until it lined up with the length of the crack in the glass. The window bowed inward just a little, testing the seal, as if something on the other side was wondering how hard it would have to push to peel it open and climb inside. Whatever part of me was still trying to be a good person let go. I tore my hand away from the lock, slammed the car into gear, and crushed the accelerator. Gravel spat, and the back end fishtailed. For a breath, the thing seemed to keep pace with me without actually moving, like a smear on the window. Then it snapped back to the edge of the trees as if yanked on a rope. In the rearview mirror, the shoulder looked empty. No pale jacket, no hood, just my hazard lights, somehow blinking on again in the distance, pulsing orange on an empty road until they finally went dark that I never reported it. There is no neat way to tell someone. I think the night tried to get in my car. I never saw any story about a missing person out there. But some nights, when I am driving home and the fuel light chimes around 2 in the morning, the nearest window starts to whistle like it is breathing again. If I glance at the clock and see 2:17 glowing back at me, I keep my eyes fixed on the road. I do not look at the shoulder, and I definitely do not look at the empty passenger seat, because I have the feeling that one night it will not be empty at all. Asterisk I used to tell people nothing truly bad happens under fluorescent office lights. At night, the building where I worked security felt boring more than anything. A glass and concrete aquarium humming with computers and vending machines. But after the outage, whenever I see a dark office tower, it looks less like a safe place and more like an unplugged life support machine someone forgot to turn back on. I was the only guard on duty that night. My partner had called in sick, which meant the whole downtown tower was mine from midnight to 6. The building hum was my background music, Vents sighing, server room fans, the clunk of the old refrigerator in the break room when it cycled. Protocol said that if the power ever died, someone had to manually walk the critical floors. I already had one note in my file about overreacting to a false alarm, so I could not afford another night of sounding crazy on the radio. Around what I thought was 2 in the morning, I was half zoning out in front of the security monitors when the camera for the 9th floor flickered. It was the one that always glitched, so at first I ignored it. Static rolled across the feed, then cleared for a heartbeat. In that brief frame, I saw a hallway I recognized and a figure standing perfectly still in the middle of it, holding a flashlight. The weird part was that the uniform and the stance looked exactly like mine, but I was sitting in a chair, nowhere near that floor. Before I could lean closer, every monitor in the room snapped to black. The hum cut out mid-breath. It was like the building suddenly inhaled and never exhaled. Lights overhead died. The refrigerator went silent. The only glow left was an emergency exit sign outside the office door and the red digits of the wall clock, frozen on 2:17 a.m. For a single stretched second, there was no sound at all, not even street noise from outside. Just my pulse in my ears and the sense that something huge and heavy had just sat down on top of the whole structure. The backup generator kicked in with a cough from somewhere below, bringing partial life back into the skeleton. A few emergency lights popped on, painting the security office in weak yellow. The hum returned, thinner and uneven, like a cheap imitation of the real thing. Cameras stayed dead. My phone still had some battery, but no signal outside the building, just the little X where bars should be. Protocol said critical floors had to be checked within 10 minutes of an outage, and floor 9 was on the list because of the server room. I grabbed my badge and radio and stepped into the stairwell, telling myself I was just walking through a temporary inconvenience dot on the stairs. Little printed notices I had never paid attention to before suddenly mattered. Warning: maglock doors engage on power loss. Carry your badge at all times. I told myself it did not apply while the generator was working. My flashlight app threw a narrow cone across the concrete. Down below, the generator grumbled. Up above, somewhere around the 9th floor, the hum sounded thinner, like it was moving up and away from me. As I climbed, exit signs glowed at each landing, their red letters floating in the dark. When I pushed the door marked 9, it opened with more effort than usual, heavy on the hinges. The instant I stepped into the hallway, it swung shut behind me with a solid, final click. I tried the handle without thinking and felt the dead resistance of the maglock. The badge reader beside it carried a little printed note of its own, non-functional during outage. I was officially locked onto the floor I had half joked about avoiding on my first week because of all the stories. The only light came from occasional green emergency blocks on the walls and an exit sign far down the corridor, glowing too bright for the amount of power we supposedly had. The hallway lights were motion activated, so they stayed dark until I walked beneath each sensor. My footsteps echoed on the carpeted floor louder than they should have, a hollow tap like I was walking inside a metal shell. The first time I stopped to listen, the echoes stopped with me, perfectly in time, so I told myself it was just the way the sound bounced. Then I tried a little experiment I wish I had never thought of. I took 3 quick steps and stopped dead. For a heartbeat, my own steps echoed. Then a 4th footfall landed behind them, just slightly late, as if someone was following 3 paces back and was a fraction off. The hair on my arms rose under the uniform sleeves. I repeated it, changing the rhythm, hoping to prove my brain wrong. Every time, a step came that I did not make. Always just a little out of sync, never overlapping. Like it was listening carefully and copying me with a delay. I called out then, because that felt less crazy than pretending nothing was happening. Custodial? Anyone stuck up here? My voice went down the hall and came back blurred. No answer, but one of the office doors on my left slowly drifted until the latch caught. There was no draft. The vents were dead. One by one, Other doors were already closed, all with the same neat click like someone had checked each room before I arrived. The hum I associated with the building surged for a moment at my back, focused and close. Even though nothing was powered up enough to make that sound, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked at the screen and felt my mouth go dry. Battery had dropped from 30-something% to 12 in the time it had taken me to walk the hall and play games with my own footsteps. An ETA notification from the power company claimed service would be restored in approximately 30 minutes, which might as well have said forever from where I stood. Down the hall, the exit sign at the far end flared brighter, and the door beneath it eased open a crack, just enough to show a lane of deeper black inside. Battery at 10%. Door behind me locked. Radios muffled by concrete and distance. If I stayed where I was, I would be standing in the dark in the middle of a silent, empty floor with something that could mimic my steps. If I ran for that exit and the light died midway, I would be in a part of the building I barely knew, cut off from everything. The cheap survival part of my brain wanted me to sit down against the wall and wait it out. The part that still cared about keeping my job and not being the guard who let something happen to the server room told my legs to move. I aimed my phone's beam down the hall and started walking, then jogging, then flat out running. As I moved, the motion-activated lights above me snapped on in sequence, lighting my path. At the same time, every light behind me went out immediately, leaving nothing but blackness in my wake, like the floor was swallowing my trail. The extra footsteps broke out of their careful delay and rushed to catch up. Heavier now, not pretending anymore. I could hear breathing behind me. Too close to be an echo. My flashlight app flickered as if something had passed in front of the phone, then died entirely, throwing me into darkness except for that distant red exit. For one stretched second, all I could hear was my own lungs and the unmistakable slap of another pair of shoes closing in. A hand clamped around my wrist from behind, ice cold and strong, pulling me sideways toward one of the closed office doors. I did not think. I just ripped my arm forward, skin burning where fingers had been, and threw my whole weight at the door under the glowing sign. The crash bar gave under my shoulder, and I tumbled into the stairwell. The hum cut off, replaced by the ordinary, distant noise of the city. Lights here were steady, boring, safe. The door slammed shut behind me with a sound that echoed up and down the concrete shaft. When I looked at my wrist, there were no bruises, just a print of cold so deep my skin felt numb. Later, when the power came back and the generator shut down, my supervisor pulled the logs. Cameras showed me leaving the security office and entering the stairwell. They showed me coming out again almost an hour later, pale and shaking. There was no footage of me on the 9th floor at all, and the motion detectors there reported nothing during the outage. He told me if I needed to make up a better story, now was the time, because seeing things in the dark did not look good in a report that I quit not long after. I told myself I was done with night work. But some nights, when I wake up in my apartment to the sudden silence of the fridge kicking off or the building heat cutting out, I hear that thin mechanical hum return in the walls, just for a moment. If I check the bedside clock on those nights, it is always frozen at 2:17 a.m. And once, when I opened my eyes too fast, there was a faint red glow on my bedroom wall that should not have been there. The word exit hovering above the floor like an invitation, waiting for me to decide if I really wanted to open the door this time. People always joke about horror movies where the call is coming from inside the house. It sounds dumb until your phone lights up in your hand with the word home, while you are already locked inside the house that number belongs to. And it sounds even dumber until the voice on the other end starts to sound like you. I was house sitting at the place I grew up in while my sister took a quick trip with her friends. Quiet street, dead end, the kind of neighborhood where porch lights do more work than the actual street lamps. The only thing my parents had not updated over the years was the old landline by the hallway. It stayed unplugged from the wall, hanging like a useless relic. Before she left, My sister joked that sometimes the landline rings itself during storms. She laughed and told me not to call her in the middle of the night over ghosts in the wiring. Again at BY midnight. The house had settled into its usual old aches and pops. The porch light was on its motion setting, which meant it waited a second before clicking when someone walked up. I knew that delay by heart. I was in my childhood bedroom, lying on the same side of the bed I used to at 16, phone screen lighting the ceiling in pale blue. The digital clock on my nightstand blinked 2:10. I remember that because I was thinking I should sleep before it rolled over to some creepy hour people talk about online. The call came in as I was scrolling. The whole room filled with the sound for an incoming call. The screen lit my face and showed one word at the top: home. Underneath, my parents' house number. The same one I was standing inside. I answered without thinking, hello? On the other end, there was nothing obvious at first. Just a soft rustle, like fabric on the mouthpiece, and a slow, steady breath that sounded far too close. Like someone was standing right next to their phone and saying nothing on purpose. I hung up, heart racing more than it should have. Then I did the stupid rational thing. I got out of bed and checked the hallway landline, even though I knew it was unplugged. The cable dangled cleanly away from the wall jack. I wrapped it tighter around the base, as if that changed anything, and tried to tell myself it was a glitch, a spoofed call, a coincidence. On my way back to my room, I checked the back door. The deadbolt there never lined up right and needed an extra shove to lock. I gave it the shove and felt it catch, then went upstairs trying not to look at the small patch of fog on the glass in the front door, shaped exactly where a face would be if someone had just exhaled against it. The second call came a few minutes later. Same word at the top of the screen. Same house number. Same cold slide in my stomach. I answered again, because curiosity is stronger than common sense. Hello. There was a slight hiss. Then my own voice came back at me, repeating the same hello, in the same tired tone, like someone had recorded it and was playing it back. I stayed quiet after that, gripping the phone until my knuckles hurt. The silence stretched. Then the line clicked, and nothing else came. I checked the call details, trying to catch my sister in some prank. But the log just showed home and a timestamp that already looked wrong, 2:17. Even though the digital clock beside me still said 2:13. It is amazing how fast your brain will invent reasonable explanations when you need them. Maybe, I thought, my sister had given someone a tour of the house before she left, and they were messing with me. Maybe some scam app was spoofing the number. I texted her, half joking, half serious. No read receipt appeared. Little sending will spun, then stopped. No bars for a moment, then one. The house felt like it was holding its breath with me. The familiar hum of the fridge downstairs suddenly too loud in the quiet asterisk. The third call did not give me time to think. The phone buzzed as I was typing another message. Same word, same number. I answered because by then not answering felt worse. This time, the voice did not repeat mine. It whispered, low and flat, I am outside your house. As those words slid into my ear, I heard the porch light click on downstairs with that familiar, delayed thunk. It was exactly the sound it made when someone came up the steps. My heart tried to convince me it was a cat, a raccoon, anything. Even as I moved to the window and peeled back the curtain just enough to see the empty porch, the door, and that same little oval of condensation on the glass, still ghosting there like a mouth. After that, every time I tried to dial out, the phone would hesitate and the call would reroute into another incoming ring from home. Each time, the voice on the other side sounded closer to my own, like it was practicing. It started commenting on what I was doing in the same flat tone. When I sat on the edge of the bed, it whispered, "You are sitting." When I got up and went to the hall, it said, "You are walking toward the hall." The worst part was that it was always half a second ahead, describing me before I actually moved. When I finally tried to call emergency services, the phone did not even pretend to connect. It just showed me my own lock screen with a missed call notification from home, stamped 2:17 again. No matter what time I looked at the clock, the call log insisted every one of these was happening at 2:17. Wi-Fi dropped out. Messages queued instead of sending. Neighbors' windows were dark when I checked through a crack in the blinds. I was the one who promised I would not make a big deal about noises and shadows this time. And now the one time I actually needed someone. I had boxed myself into silence, finally. I got tired of feeling like cattle being herded around my own house. I made a deal with myself in the same stubborn voice I use when I try to talk you into watching horror videos alone. I would open the front door once. I would film the empty porch. I would prove to myself that the calls were some glitch, and then I would lock everything and go to sleep or leave. The phone buzzed again as I walked downstairs. The screen did not say home this time. It said outside. My fingers shook as I slid the deadbolt back. Even locked, it had felt slightly loose. Now, as I turned the knob, I could feel a faint pressure from the other side, as if someone were leaning gently against the door, waiting for me to decide. I cracked it open. Cold air slid in, colder than the weather had any right to be. The porch was empty. No movement, no shadow, just the sound of my own breathing and the distant tremor of a car on another street. The phone in my hand vibrated again. I lifted it to my ear without meaning to, like someone else was moving my arm. "I told you," the voice said. "I am outside your house." I stared at the empty porch and realized the voice did not sound like it was coming through the phone anymore. It was right beside my ear, speaking in time with my breath. On the frosted glass panel of the door, more condensation bloomed from the outside, not in a random smear this time, but in the shape of a face pressed close, features blurred. For a heartbeat, we breathed together, me on one side of the door and something that had my voice and my number on the other. Then every light in the house flickered, and the porch light clicked off as if whatever had triggered it had finally stepped away. That I slammed the door and shoved the deadbolt into place, so hard it stuck. The screen of my phone went black, then woke again on its own. No active call, no audio, just a fresh line in the log. Missed call, home, 2:17 a.m. I slept with the bedroom door locked. Phone face down, and every time it vibrated after that, I pretended it was a notification I could check in the morning. That I have moved twice since then. Different cities, different numbers, new devices. But every so often, usually on nights, I let one of these stories play too late. My phone lights up in the dark with a missed call from a contact I do not remember saving. Labeled home, stamped at 2:17 a.m. I never answer. Some calls are better left outside the house, wherever outside actually is. If you are still here with me, listening in the dark, you made it through all 4 of tonight's Dead of Night stories. We went from something tapping at a bedroom window, to a figure waiting on the roadside, to a building that woke up when the power died, and finally to a call that should never have reached you inside your own house. Maybe you noticed some of the threads tying them together. The time that keeps showing up. The way ordinary things, like a window latch, a gas gauge, an exit sign, or a phone screen, start acting like they are paying attention to you. That is the part that stays with me. Not the jump scares. The idea that the places and objects you trust the most might be quietly learning how to knock back. If any of these stories found a corner in your mind, tell me which one got under your skin the most. Was it the reflection at the window, the thing on the shoulder of the road, the footsteps in the dark hallway, or the voice calling from home? Let me know in the comments. I read them at night more often than I should. If you want more late night confessions like this, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who thinks they are not scared of the dark. And tonight, when you check your phone one last time before you sleep, just do me a favor. If you see a missed call at 2:17 a.m. from a name that feels a little too familiar, maybe let it ring.